This book of Second Exodus, chapter 9 and verse 1. He answered me then and said, Measure thou the time diligently, and when thou seest part of the signs past, which I have told thee, then shalt thou well understand that it is the very same time wherein the highest will begin to visit the world which he made. Barak tha Yahweh, Barak tha Yahweh Shai, Barak tha Yahweh, Barak tha Yahweh Shai, Barak tha Yahweh, Barak tha Yahweh Shai, call Lord and Lie Yahweh, by Hashem Yahweh Shai, by Hashem Akakadash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders, great millstone, rule well, being a great example to the young brothers in the truth, and peace and blessings to the hopeful elect. Lord, when this edifying. Shalom.
يا ساتر يا ساتر يا ساتر يا ساتر يا ساتر.
Well, tonight the fighting in the Middle East has taken an ominous turn. Israeli ground forces have now entered Gaza. That's a major escalation.
Can you just paint us a picture of how dire the situation is right now?
This is what we know so far. There are currently no IDF ground troops inside the Gaza Strip. The IDF air and ground forces are carrying out strikes on targets in the Gaza Strip. So, despite reports, we can tell you this morning that there is no ground offensive from Israel into Gaza so far. It's just gone 2 a.m. in Jerusalem.
This the book of Luke, chapter 21 and verse 24. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and they shall be led away captive unto all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down by the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. And these are the times we coming into, the time of the Gentiles, man. You know. And I ain't gonna, cause I gotta redo this video. I went back and looked, and it ain't have sound. So Lord willing, this one have sound. This Matthew chapter 24 and verse 3. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, unto his disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming and the end of the world? And Yahushua answered and said unto him, Take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Hamashiach, and shall deceive many. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in diverse places. All these are the beginning of sorrows.
You know, Ali and I have both been to Israel. It's a wonderful country, and one of the wonderful parts of it, obviously the people, but the fact that they can mix Israeli Arabs and also Israeli Jews together. I mean, there's the four quarters. I mean, it's a special place. And to have them warring on the streets.
Jerusalem trodden down by Gentiles. Both nations are Gentiles, and they're fighting in our land. And this happened a few months back, but hey, there's still wars and rumors of wars, man. You know, but the end is not yet, man.
Like that in the gang warfare.
But I would say last time that the violence escalated, and it was nothing like this. It was very different. It was rockets and all, but we weren't seeing these ground attacks and assaults.
Yeah, it feels like the same movie, but just slightly different.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו מתמודדים במערכה עם שתי חזיתות. החזית האחת, עזה. אמרתי שאנחנו נגבה מחיר כבד מאוד מהחמאס ומשאר ארגוני הטרור, ואנחנו עושים זאת ונמשיך לעשות זאת בעוצמה רבה. המילה האחרונה לא נאמרה, והמבצע הזה יימשך ככל שידרש.
Tonight, Israeli tanks and armored personnel carriers headed for the border with Gaza as Israeli military officials say they have begun a ground assault into the Palestinian enclave.
Despite reports, we can tell you this morning that there is no ground offensive from Israel into Gaza so far. It's just gone 2 a.m. in Jerusalem. We'll get as much up-to-date information as we can for you.
The thing is, we're in sort of a situation where we go through the cycle of warfare every few years. Hamas attacks, Israel reestablishes deterrence, and then we start all over in a little bit. It has been quieter, but we haven't had an all-out ground war since 2014, but there's been several major escalations since then.
I've been appalled by the media reporting, but honestly, Melanie, as you well know, this is not new. This happens every time there's a conflict involving Israel. I can't quite understand it. I don't know whether it's victim politics, whether it's exaggerated anti-racism turned into anti-Jewish feeling. I don't know what it is.
We haven't heard much from the Middle East, have we, recently? Hasn't it been fairly peaceful?
No.
No?
It's just that we haven't been covering it very much.
Right.
No, we've had other worries to think about, but it still remains very volatile.
This was already the heaviest fighting between Israel and Palestinians in years.
Israeli airstrikes pounding the Gaza Strip since dawn. 2 million residents fenced in with nowhere to hide.
We were really heading towards a catastrophe.
Sirens fill the night sky over Tel Aviv. From their rooftops, terrified residents watch the missiles descend on their city.
The worst violence in 7 years between Israel and Hamas militants is intensifying tonight.
The United Nations Middle East envoy warning hostilities are moving towards a full-scale war.
If they want to escalate, the resistance is ready. If they want to stop, the resistance is ready. If they want to move their hand out of Jerusalem, the resistance is ready. This is the message that we delivered to all the sides and to whoever is involved.
But miles to the north, this renewed conflict and the history behind it has spawned something else. This is Bat Yam near Tel Aviv. Israeli Jews attacking Arabs. In cities across the country, there are riots between the two sides. In Lod, between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, the Arab community were protecting the mosque into the evening.
And late tonight, the violence spilling into the Israeli streets. A Jewish mob attacking an Arab driver. Brutal scenes tonight, and we are seeing those violent mobs on both sides in multiple Israeli cities, and that's what makes this round of violence different and even more alarming.
Palestinian Israelis and Jewish Israelis living in close proximity, turning on each other.
And these things are not going to stop. This Joel chapter 3 and verse 1. For behold, in those days and in that time when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all nations. I will bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat, and I will plead with them for my people and for my heritage, whom they have scattered amongst the nations and parted my land. Yeah, so eventually this is gonna lead to world war, like the scriptures say. Let's get it. In Jeremiah chapter 50 and verse 45, it say, therefore hear ye the counsel of the Lord, of Yahweh, the Lord, that he have taken against Babylon, and his purpose that he have purposed against the land of the Chaldeans, going into America. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their inhabitants desolate with them. Yeah, the least of the flock going into these Israelis, man. You know, and these Palestinians or Ishmaelites, and they are backed, you know, like Hamas and all these different military groups are supposed, they backed by Russia and these and Iran and these, you know, they backed by those people. So Israel gonna do something and gonna pull America into it, and America gonna do something, and the Lord gonna put hooks in Russia's jaws and make them turn back and you know, prepare to, you know, they already preparing to fight, but make them get back in that Soviet spirit, man. To turn it into World War III. You know? Second Exodus chapter 9 and verse 3. It say, therefore, when there shall be seen earthquakes and uproars of the people in the world, and that's what you're seeing right here.
And closer to Tel Aviv, Palestinian businesses were ransacked. The wave of violence has hit dozens of cities and regions across Israel. It's the worst between communities living alongside each other in decades. Israeli officials say they are more violent than the protests that led to the Al-Aqsa Intifada in 2000.
More than 60 Palestinians have been killed, including 16 children. This is a crime, this man says. They were civilians. It's the worst violence in 7 years.
This how you know these people are not the people. This Micah chapter 4 and verse 3. Because according to the scriptures, there should be no fighting going on, period. You know, according to Yahweh Shem Yahushai. Why? Because if the true people was in the land, it would be no more war, according to this. This Micah chapter 4 and verse 1, it say, but in the last days it shall come to pass that the mountain of the house of Yahweh shall be established in the top of all the mountains, going into the government. You know, the rulership of the Lord's house. Starting with the 144,000. Starting with Yahushua, on down to the 144,000. With King David reigning up under Yahushua. It say the mountain established upon the top of the mountains, all the rest of the heathen. And it shall be exalted above the hills, the smaller governments. And the people shall flow unto it. And many nations shall come and say, come and let us go up unto the mountain of Yahweh by Hashem Yahushai, into the house of God, into the house of the God of Jacob, and he shall teach us of his ways, and we shall walk in his paths. For the law shall go forth from Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. Is that going on over there in Israel and Hamas? Where people getting put to death, man, in droves? No, it's not. You know, and since then that little scrimmage, the little fighting that went on, they ain't stopped. They still bumming each other and fighting over there, man. It's just not being put out there, man. You know, verse 3 is saying, he shall judge among many people and rebuke strong nations afar off. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares. All their weapons going to be turned into forming tools, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. But what they doing right now, they fighting, man. They go to show you that them going into the land was not a fulfillment of prophecy, man.
Hamas has launched over 1,600 rockets towards Israel the past few days.
Or more than 1,000 rockets overnight, last night, which is quite unprecedented and extraordinary.
The air raid sirens sounded through the day. In the skies, the trails of Israel's Iron Dome missile defense system. It shot down most of the Hamas rockets. The Israeli communities here are used to attacks from Gaza, but not this many in just a few hours.
This is the third time it's happened since we've been here.
Miss Omar, in one of her statements about these very events, she said, Israel airstrikes killing civilians in Gaza is an act of terrorism. Palestinians deserve protection. Unlike Israel, missile defense programs such as Iron Dome don't exist to protect Palestinian civilians. It's unconscionable to not condemn these attacks.
Listen and look at those pictures. You are looking at Israeli missiles exploding in Gaza overnight.
And people on both sides of the conflict, I have to say this, are very passionate in the support for their group. Very passionate. But I actually want to look past that, as that's what a lot of people right now are doing.
This the book of Psalms, chapter 73 and verse 5. They are not in trouble as other men, neither are they plagued like other men. Going into the Edomites, man. See, they can run around the earth fucking everybody up and doing what they want, and there's no judgment for it. It seems as if there's going to be no judgment for it, but it is, man. The Lord going to come back and destroy all you heathens and put Esau under his foot and the rest of you heathens. And Esau gonna be done away with, and you gonna learn the ways of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai.
Today, they're trying to obviously back up the side that they belong on.
The deadly fighting follows weeks of near nightly protests over forced evictions in East Jerusalem.
Do you accept what UN organizations, what human rights organizations are saying? You are an occupying power that is violating international law.
I can see that you've gathered and put together all the quotes. The point is you and people have to understand and realize you're not talking and interviewing me in 1967. We're talking about 2021.
Sir, I've quoted to you quotes from Rupert Colville in May the 7th, 2021, and I have done my research and I make no apology for it. These need to be addressed.
That's okay, I understand that.
Are you saying to viewers, the UN, UNESCO, Amnesty International, I've got a quote here if you want to hear it, where they say settling civilians in occupied territories violates international humanitarian law and amounts to a war crime. Are you telling viewers the UN, the International Court of Justice, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch are all wrong and only you are right?
I'm saying, no, what I'm saying is that Jerusalem is not
so
occupied.
hang on, so you said no. If they're not wrong, then you admit that you are an occupying power that is violating international law by your intervention.
The target, says the Israeli military, are Hamas and Islamic Jihad leaders and their installations. The material damage is immense.
And yet today you had a 13-story residential apartment building in Gaza targeted by the Israeli Air Force destroyed. How is that not anything other than a war crime, a deliberate attack on a civilian target?
Hamas had warned of a major strike on Tel Aviv if Israel targeted residential buildings in Gaza. A little after sunset, after telling the families who lived here to get out, Israel's military did just that. The Israeli Prime Minister had warned of a gathering intensity and pace of attack. The army said the building was in part used by Hamas.
You know, I think it's actually very disfortunate that people are trying to equate the IDF response to Hamas as a terrorist organization. Israel acts in accordance with the international law. We target only Hamas targets, and every target that we're firing at is being chosen very carefully.
Hussein Hamad was one of several Palestinian children killed in Israeli airstrikes on Monday.
وليش قتلوه يعني؟ ما هم بقتلوا فيش حساب لهم، ما هم بقتلوا فيش حساب، العالم كله بتفرج، ولو قتل طفل، لو قتل مرة، لو قتل إيش ما جا، فيش واحد يحاسبهم هذول الناس، فعشان هيك هو متاح له، يعني لو قتل طفل ولا حاجة.
We don't have time to get into an argument about international law. Suffice to say that most human rights groups criticize Israel for violating human rights law, and they criticize Hamas. But you leveled an apartment building. I think you gave them a 1-hour warning to get out of the building. You think that's in line with humanitarian law to bomb a civilian apartment building in Gaza?
You know, Hamas is using the Palestinians in Gaza as human shields. They're firing rockets at Israel from within centers of civilian population because they want to see these sites. They want to force Israel to respond.
Hamas purposefully makes their civilians the shields to their offensive points. That's not hyperbole. Think about that, what they do to their population. I don't want to just speak about this in platitudes.
But police tactics are under scrutiny after this video was shared on social media of officers storming a family home in the northern city of Haifa. They can be seen beating an unarmed Palestinian-Israeli man. And to the south of Tel Aviv, the city of Lod has been put under a state of emergency, the first in an Arab community since 1966.
You were mentioning earlier in your show about the casualties and the children that were killed, and you said that it was results of IDF strikes. But we know for a fact that 6 of these children, for example, were killed because of Hamas rockets were misfired and fell in within Gaza Strip. and they kill the Palestinians. So I'm taking any report
just to be clear, I just want to be clear here, Elad. I just want us to be clear. Let's find common ground. Are we now saying, is your position, because I'm sure militant groups are listening in from across the world, is your position that apartment buildings are fair game if there's someone inside you don't like? Is that the position of the Israeli government tonight?
You know, you say that you don't want to go into international law, but the question that you're asking is exactly a question of international law. It's a question of what is a legitimate target.
It's a simple question. Are apartment buildings okay to bomb? Because I'm sure Hamas will say that.
If it's a military target, then it's a legitimate strike. If Hamas is using the target in order to hide weapons, in order to use it as a commanding post, then it's a legitimate strike. But you said you don't want to go there, so...
Okay, I mean...
No one can look at this and see anything other than a tragedy that has happened here. But the images that are coming out of Gaza are truly horrific. It seems that what Israel is doing in Gaza is totally disproportionate to what is happening here.
I would beg to differ. I think that what we are doing are specific strikes against military targets inside Gaza that are part of the Hamas and the Islamic Jihad's military infrastructure.
We watched the Iron Dome intercept some of them as they flew north.
Let's go in. Come on, Mohammed.
Hamas claims to be the defender of the Palestinian cause, striking their occupier. Israel will strike back harder still, and the diplomacy to break this cycle isn't there.
But how did this current attack start and why?
Well, you've got a number of separate issues. You've got the Israelis who are trying to expand into East Jerusalem, which the Palestinians say belongs to them. You've also got political unrest within Israel itself. They can't agree on who ought to be prime minister. They're having a series of general elections, all of which are inconclusive. And then you've also got political tensions within the Palestinian community itself, between Hamas, which is doing the attacking from Gaza, and the Palestine Liberation Organization. So both sides have got their own internal politics as well as external politics, and then you've got the outside countries like Iran, etc., who also want to buy into the controversy.
This morning, Israeli tanks were filmed heading towards the border with Gaza. Israel says it's too early to say whether there'll be a ground offensive, but it's preparing for all contingencies.
So what the media have failed to report is that this tension, this violence, is the result of an incitement which has been going on for weeks. At the beginning of Ramadan, there was the beginning of incitement by the Palestinian Authority, by Hamas, calling Palestinian Arabs to holy war, as a result of which there were attacks on Jews in Jerusalem in the streets, requiring hospitalization, attacks in the streets, attacks on the light railway. There were attempts to arrest them. There were then violent disturbances by the Arabs. And what then happened, as Ramadan proceeded, was that the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the supposedly holy place for Muslims, was turned into a theatre of war.
Chaos and confrontation inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound as Israeli police fire stun grenades to disperse Muslim worshippers.
At around 7:20, all of a sudden, a huge force of police attacked Muslim worshippers who were inside the mosque.
The police also fired tear gas and rubber bullets at Palestinian protesters.
And that's another way to prove that those not the people. You ain't gonna be no damn Muslim worshiping in the land, man. You gonna be doing the will of Yahweh Shem Yahushua, all nations. All idols are gonna be cast down. You ain't gonna be worshiping Buddha or Allah, the Hindu goddess Shiva, and all the rest of these other false gods, man. No, everybody in the earth is gonna worship Yahweh Shem Yahushua.
They say they responded after stones, bottles and fireworks were thrown at them. Al-Quds Day, also known as Jerusalem Day, falls on the last Friday of the fasting month of Ramadan. The annual event is a protest against Israel's rule of Jerusalem.
And as I think you may yourself have referred to, this extraordinary piece broadcast by the senior Hamas operative saying explicitly, cut the throats of the Jews, and this is a holy war against what he called Jews and polytheists, which I believe is a kind of euphemism for Christians. So that's what we're in here. We're in an Islamic holy war incited by Mahmoud Abbas and the Hamas, and being sanitized, misrepresented quite wickedly by the Western media.
What you're doing is taking the law into your own hands, but I'm afraid we are out of time. Thank you very much for explaining your perspective. We'll leave it to the viewers to draw their conclusions.
This was the same thing that Jesus was talking about in Luke 21 when he said, when you see Jerusalem being surrounded by armies, and you will know that its desolation is near. There will be wrath, he said, against this people, and they will be taken as prisoners to all the nations. Well, we know that happened in the year 70 AD. He says, and Jerusalem will be trampled on by Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles are fulfilled.
Yeah, and that's
so for
that Jerusalem being trodden down by Gentiles to the time the Gentile be fulfilled is talking about now. From back when it was took over, from back then all the way to now, man. From 70 AD to now, the land has been trodden down by the Gentiles, man. You know? And this and you so-called Jewish people, you are Edomites, man. Idumea. I mean Amalek. This Ezekiel chapter, Idumea just mean Edom. This Ezekiel chapter 6 and verse 5, it say, therefore thus saith the Lord, Yahweh, surely in the fire of my jealousy I have spoken against the residue of the heathen, and against all of Idumea, Esau, Edom, which have appointed my lands unto their possession with the joy of their heart, with despiteful minds to cast it out as a prey. Yeah, and that's what they did with the Balfour Declaration, man. They took the land in their possession. And that's why those Palestinians over there really fighting, because they slowly trying to get more and more land. They said we're going to split this with you. But no, they slowly trying to push those people all the way out the land, man. And that's how Esau Edom do. He just, the thief coming not but to steal, kill, and destroy. And that's what he doing, man. And those people trying to fight for what don't belong to them ultimately, because it don't belong to them either, man. They're going to be taken up out of their land. They're going to be destroyed in this third world war, man.
the next 1,897 years, Jerusalem was under the control. It was literally trampled under by Gentiles or non-Jews, until something completely unexpected happened in June 7th, 1967.
And this guy don't know what the hell he's talking about. Jerusalem is still trodden down by the Gentiles until this day, man. The Lord say he gonna bring us back into the land, not no damn Balfour Declaration.
When we find the prognosis that was that Israel was going to be wiped out by the Arab nations, instead the opposite happened, and they recaptured the city of Jerusalem. They didn't take it away from the Palestinians. A Palestinian is a make-believe name for a group of people.
Jewish is a make-believe name by a group of people called Edomites, man. That's this guy who claims he's a preacher of who the world ignorantly called Jesus Christ, man, and God. You know, he feel like he know what he talking about, man, but he wrong, man. Palestinian is a made-up name, but so is African American, so is black. You know, that's a made-up name too, but you still put it on us. Chinese, Asian, those are made-up names as well. The scriptures say he covered the he put a covering cast upon all the people in the earth, man. Changed everything up, man.
That never existed, never had a national identity. Palestine was a region and not a nation. It was Jordan, the country of Jordan, that controlled that entire area, including the city of Jerusalem.
Rockets from Gaza again fell on southern Israeli cities tonight, and the Israelis retaliated once more. And behind all this, a land so divided for so long feels right now extremely tense.
Yeah, and it is tense, and it ain't gonna get no better, man. But this the last one, Proverbs chapter 29 and verse 2. It say, when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice, but when the wicked bear rule, the people mourn. And the people are going to continue to mourn all the way until this place is destroyed, man, utterly destroyed. You know, starting with America, Babylon the Great, also the land of Israel, and the heathens, the Palestinians, the Ishmaelites, and all these other nations are going to be put under our feet. And after that, guess what? They going to be able to go into their own land after they serve their captivity, man, and rebuild up Jerusalem and whatever we want, man. They going to serve up under us, man. But that's pretty much the point. Wars and rumors of wars. This is another edition of Measured Out of Time Diligently. With that, Lord, when this edifying, I want to end it, giving all honor and glory to Yahweh, by Hashem, Yahweh Shai, by Hashem, Kakadash, double honors to the apostles and the elders, a great millstone, rule web, and a great example to his young brothers in the truth. Peace and blessings to the hopeful elect. Shalom. Kwam Yashala and the